in a lot of families, spankings, and I'm using air quotes, are considered normal forms of discipline. So,
Talked to Karina like I did every day for like the past 2 years. And then I had asked her if I could talk to my brother, and she got like completely quiet on me. And she was like, "What?"
welcome to Come Back with Erica Cobb, a community of folks like yourselves who are getting ready and staying ready for their next chapter. Well, my guest today is turning pain into purpose because this rings true for her. She's a young woman who entered the Colorado welfare system at just 16 years old with her younger brother after she was abused in her home by her father. After being taken out of the household, she and her brother were both sent into foster care, where they stayed in close contact for 2 years until they were separated. After spending years dealing with the grief and pain of losing her brother, she has made it her mission to spread awareness about the abuse that takes place in child welfare systems and has even contributed to getting the bill passed to allow siblings to stay together in these systems. Now she runs her own nonprofit while also encouraging others in her situation by creating online content through TikTok and other avenues. Dominique Mallard, welcome to Come Back with Erica Cobb.
Hey.
Hi. So, okay, I know that this is can be a sensitive topic to a lot of people. It can be very triggering, but I just want to really talk about this space and the idea that what you're doing is testimony teaching, and you are being vulnerable with your testimony in hopes of helping others. So, can you tell us a bit of your background and what led to you being put in the foster care system?
So like for the longest I used to always call it like I got an ass whooping. But it like took me like a while to understand like that's not what it was. It was actually abuse. My father tying me down to a bed, naked and hitting me with an extension cord, that's abuse. That's not a whooping or a spanking. But like long story short, like that was like a norm for me. So like this time I didn't want to be tied down or take off my clothes because I'm like 16, I'm growing, I'm a teenager. And so like my dad was really mad. So I was like running from him, and then like the extension cord had caught me in my right eye, which caused me to go to school with a black eye. And
I'm
then from there, social services was like whoop came in and removed us that day.
So I you said this in your explanation. And first of all, I am so sorry that you ever had to experience that type of trauma because no one deserves that. And I thank you for your transparency. But you did mention, it wasn't a whooping or a spanking. And in a lot of families, spankings, and I'm using air quotes, are considered normal forms of discipline. So the idea that you had been groomed to believe that this was normal, what made you realize that it had crossed a line?
When I would have to go to school and lie about what happened, because I mean, like, spankings are legal, you know, but when I would have to go to school and start lying about like why I had bruises instead of being like, oh, I just got a spanking, that's when it became like real to me, like, okay, this is not okay, clearly, that's why my dad tied me down because no one could see whelps.
Mm, wow. I think listening to your explanation, it's also so telling about the cycle of abuse because not only are you the victim, but also you are the accomplice in some sense of, speaking because you're now held accountable for protecting your abuser. So it's like a double trauma.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very telling. A lot of people are going to listen to this and say, I can discipline my child however I choose to discipline my child. So what is your advice to someone who may not know the line between discipline and abuse in their household? And what behavior should someone be looking out for and seeking help?
I would say, I mean, as far as like discipline, of course, we do timeouts. Like I have my kids, right? And my husband has his kids, and I've been with him for 5 years, and I've only seen him spank his kids twice. in that 5 year period, and it was like they were like really, really cutting up and they just weren't like listening. They were going beyond of the disrespect. And it was like a couple of taps, it wasn't even with the bell or nothing. It was just like two. I said stop. Or like my daughter was trying to stick stuff into the plug and like, out of fear, like it was just a quick reflex. I so cried, but I like popped her hand and I started crying because I felt like shit because I thought I had abused her or something, and that's not how it's trying to come out. But I just say like talking, our kids are very understanding when it comes to talking, or we remove Game Boys, gadgets, Nintendos, Xboxes they're not allowed to have, and we force them to go outside too. Like if you're in trouble, you go play outside.
Yeah. Well, you said that you cried after you swatted your daughter's hand. What was her response to that?
When I popped her, the way she looked at me, it broke my heart. She was like, and just like started crying, and it made me feel bad because like I've always said, because of how my childhood was, I would never want to put my hands on my children,
Yeah.
but I had to understand, like, it's just a quick reaction. She was messing with the plug, and it was just like I was also popping stuff out of her hand.
Yeah. A lot of people, and obviously everybody's a critic when it comes to other people's parenting. And
Hmm.
there are going to be people who are going to say it's never appropriate to put your hands on a child in anger or in excitement. And I do think that this is a very nuanced conversation and that
Hmm.
there are a lot of different angles. And I, especially not being a parent myself, will never tell someone how to parent, with the exception of someone who isn't actually parenting but they're abusing. So we talked about the treatment from your father that sent you and your brother to into the system. Can you share your experience while you were in the foster care system?
Ooh, yeah, so my first foster home was Miss Brown, like just like given the fact that when you're removed from the home, that's traumatic as it is, like you're being removed. Because I never blame my mom of why I went into the system, because my mom was also getting abused. So I never ever blame her. She did everything that she was supposed to do as a step parent. She's not even my real mom, but she did everything that she was supposed to do. But my first foster home, I'll never forget it. This lady, she kept locks on her refrigerators, right? And like say like the back of a bag of chips, it says 13 chips per serving or something like that. She would literally count out 13 chips and hand it to us. And like that's how she fed us. If it said a teaspoon of honey, that's what we got. And we only ate like 3 times a day. So she fed us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But that's how she fed us, is the suggested serving size. So we were like always hungry. She made us use the same cup, the same fork, and the same plate. So we had all our own designated dishes. And when we were done, we would have to wash them off, dry them, and put them in a Ziploc bag to be used the next day as if we had a disease. And with her, we weren't allowed to go outside and play with the neighborhood kids. We weren't allowed to communicate with everybody. And we were always, always confined to our rooms. Like when we got home, we would always have to stay in our rooms. There wasn't no, we couldn't hang out in the living room, hang out. And she had a nice big house. We couldn't even go in her backyard to go play. We were just confined to our rooms. And then I also had this other foster mom who was a captain in the Air Force. She was okay as far as it, like, like she always had a dress, she always had our hair done because we were all African American, and so was she. So she was big on keeping our hair in protective styles, keeping us up with the beauty shop, and keeping us like with the flyest things. Just she was just a little psycho. And then I had this one foster home because I went to 23 different placements, so it's hard for me
You had
to.
23 different foster homes
Yep,
in how long of a span of time?
5 years.
So over 5 years, you moved 23 times.
Yep.
And how many school districts did you end up in?
Um, Now, see, when it came to that, I was able to stay with my school because I went to an alternative school, and they just they just let me graduate with doing extra paperwork at home.
Mhm.
Because I was a junior when I had went into foster care system, so the school system was about dang near over for me. So I did leave my original school. I went to Smoky Hill, from Gateway to Smoky Hill, and I stayed at Smoky Hill. And I was on the alternative program though, so I did an off-campus program. And then when I was moving around, they just switched me to online, so I was still able to get my high school diploma.
Right. Right.
which
And
is rare for foster kids to get.
I
We don't
was
get
gonna
high school
say,
diploma.
like, out of everything, that was at least something that was a fortunate situation for you, because
Mm.
a lot of kids, end up in multiple schools, caught, pulled out in the middle of the school year. So that is pretty incredible that you were able to stay at the same school. But I'm also, people have a lot of different thoughts about like foster care and the system, and I can say, and I'll say, just for balance, that as a casa, I have felt very fortunate, not only as a casa but for our kiddos, that their foster care situation has been very healthy, thriving environments. That's not a concern for us, but I do understand that people take advantage of this situation, because a lot of people will become foster parents because they're looking for a check. What do you want people to know about the foster system?
So I feel like that a lot of people expect that they're gonna foster more so of younger children, because younger children, they're easier to, I call it reprogram. It's easier to reprogram a younger child than it is for, like, say someone like me, a 16-year-old. You can't reprogram me. I'm already set in my ways. I already have my own views, my own mentality, versus, my little brother was 4. It would be easy to retrain him and show him, the differences. So oftentimes a lot of people do go into foster care and they only take the younger kids because, as a teenager, we have bad stigmatism. Teens are running, smoking weed, ditching class, doing the most, right? Like just being like your typical adolescent times 10 though. So not oftentimes that teenagers were left out. Like I remember, like I sat in a juvenile detention facility in jail, juvenile jail, until they found me a home that would accept me.
So
Yeah,
how long were you in juvenile detention, jail?
3 weeks,
2 weeks.
three.
So 3 weeks.
Mm,
So okay, so first of all, okay, that's horrific, because the idea that you were a victim of abuse,
mm,
and then you were put in jail for
yeah,
3 weeks, while while the system, while people scramble to find you a temporary placement. And it's such a, you said that your brother, who was 4, could easily be reprogrammed, but at 16 your mind is still developing too, and what you're being told in that moment is that you are the person who needs to be criminalized by
right.
putting you in, like, holding, essentially, for 3 weeks in purgatory. So I
Mm,
mean, we can talk about the flaws in the system all day long, but when you were in jail for 3 weeks because you were a victim of abuse, what did you experience, and where was your mind going at that time?
um, I was very hurt. I mean, okay, so let's rewind. Okay, so I shoplifted from King Supers because I was hungry. I ran away from my foster home, and me and my foster sister, we went to King Supers to get some food. And of course we got caught. And then when we got caught, we got transported to the juvenile foot. No, the juvenile assessment center. They call it the Jack. I don't know what it's called today. And then when I was at the juvenile assessment center, my foster mom would not allow me to come back. So then they had to process me and keep me into jail until my caseworker was able to find a placement. And that's what my caseworker and the judge had ordered. So when I was in jail, it was just like I was hurt. I was very like, traumatized. I didn't understand it. Thank God for my casa. I know that you're a casa, but thank God for my casa. Like she stuck beside me. She came to visit me. She even tried to ask them to let me be placed with her until they found a placement. But being a casa, kids are not allowed at your home.
Right.
So that was an option. So she just she just put money on my books because you do have books in the juvenile assessment center. And she was so cool. Like I know she probably wasn't allowed because I wasn't allowed to talk to my mom, but she would three-way my mom in on a phone call with us so I could be able to talk to her and stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So,
First of all, I just want to pause down and explain to my audience that the CASA that we're speaking of is Court Appointed Special Advocate. It is
mm,
a volunteer based opportunity where you can basically be the eyes, the ears, the voice in court for a child who is in the system. So, one of the things that CASAs are not allowed to do are introduce the children to any other adult in your life or really anyone in your life. We're not allowed to let our children know where we live. We certainly cannot bring them home. So the idea that the CASA was trying to intervene and at least give you temporary placement is not something that we're allowed to do as we were sworn in by the court. So
mhm,
I just wanted to explain that to people who are listening who may not understand that. I also want to circle back to something you said in terms of clarifying why you were in juvenile detention for those 3 weeks, because I think it's really important. When we have these conversations and I'm speaking to someone and the conversation is centered around abuse, there are certain things that are very triggering to me because I want people to understand why it's not okay to frame these things this way. I appreciate that you clarified why you ended up in juvenile detention, that you had shoplifted from King Supers, which is a grocery store chain here in Colorado. However, shoplifting from a grocery store because you are being given a serving size of 13 chips is not actually a criminal act. I believe that is survival. And I do want to make that very clear that in no way should you have been in jail for 3 weeks based on an act of survival. So I do think that it is a predatory practice. I do think that it is making you a victim on top of being a victim. And I do appreciate the clarification, but I also want to be very clear that survival should not be criminalized for anyone for any reason.
mm.
So I wanted to talk about you and your younger brother because you were in close contact for 2 years before you were separated. So what do you remember about your brother before you two were separated?
So my little brother had the greatest foster mom in the world. She was fantastic. She believed in family reunification. She believed in making sure that we seen. So I was in Fort Collins, which is about like, an hour and a half away from Denver. And she lived in Thornton. So mind you, now we're on the whole other side of town from her. And she would come faithfully every week, bring my brother to me. And then when I got moved back down to the Denver metro area, every week she'd come pick me up. We'd go eat. Then we'd go to her house. We'd hang out, and then like there were times where I would get in trouble. So they would take my visits from my brother. So I wasn't allowed to see my brother when I got there. So I was real active with self-harming when I was in care. So I used to cut myself and stuff. So when I would participate in behaviors like that, they would always say that I couldn't see my brother. So of course, Karina would always still show up for the visits, but just Ricky wouldn't. But I mean, like we stayed in close contact. Like we rocked hard every time our visits would come to the end. My brother would cry and kick and scream, and he just wanted to be back home with me. He was also uncomfortable at the fact that because he was a little black kid, he placed me in an all white home. Granted, love Karina, you know, but he was like, "Hey, I'm kind of uncomfortable here because they don't look like me." And I had to explain to him that it's okay. I get it. And then like everything was cool. Like called him, and then one day called Karina, answered. I talked to Karina like I did every day for like the past 2 years. And then I had asked her if I can talk to my brother, and she got like completely quiet on me. And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, can I talk to my brother?" Because I could hear it in her voice. I'm like, "I've never heard that back from you before. You'd always say, yeah, and pass the phone." And she was like, "You don't know?" And I was like, "I don't know what. Like, what are you talking about?" And like, she starts crying and she's like, "I really cannot believe." She's like, "You don't know where your brother is or anything." And I was like, "No, no, no. Can you just tell me?" She's like, "I don't even know if I'm allowed to tell you or what's going on, but I'm surprised that you don't know." And then that's when she told me that my brother was adopted and removed from her home. I did not hear from my caseworker, did not hear from my GEL, did not hear from anyone but the foster parent when I just called like every other day. And it was just like, "Oh, he's not here."
That is horrific,
Yeah.
like on so many fronts, because one, bless this woman that she was so active in making sure that you continue to have a relationship with your sibling. It gets tricky on the other side of it because there's information that I cannot share, from foster home to foster home because we were CASAs for a sibling group of 5 and they were separated at some point in the middle of our case. So it does get tricky because you're not allowed to share information from placement to placement. Um, you also are in situations where the previous foster family doesn't know where the children are going. So sharing information becomes very sensitive, but the idea that your brother was adopted and taken to another placement, a permanent placement. And at this time, how old was he?
He was 6,
Okay,
and
so
I called on my 18th birthday.
you saw him on your 18th birthday.
No, I called him on my 18th
Oh,
birthday, and
okay.
that's when Karina told me.
That he was adopted. So the other backstory to that too is that in the state of Colorado, we have what's called EPP. And if you are a child under the age of 5, you get expedited permanent placement. It doesn't sound like he necessarily had that, but essentially it means that you're supposed to be placed in a permanent residence within a full calendar year. So the
Mhm.
idea that he would have gotten adopted before you isn't necessarily shocking, but the idea that you didn't know is shocking. So his former foster family did not know where he was at that point.
No, she did not know. The parents. So the parents had. She told me that the parents had came to meet him and everything, and then they had left, and then they came back for him. And at this time, see, Karina also was fighting to adopt Ricky. She wanted to adopt him and have him in his home, but the state would not allow her to adopt, nor would they allow me into her home, was because they knew that she was going to allow him to reach out to his biological family when he was ready, you know? Because I shared everything with Karina, I shared everything with her, Granted, my dad is a piece of shit, but I still, till this day, I love my dad. I talked to him yesterday.
Yeah.
So, like, Karina believed in that reunification piece. She wanted to have him, and they did not allow her to have him because they knew that she was going to allow contact with the family when the time was right. Of course she was going to do it safely, but that's why they would not allow her to adopt her. They told her, no, it's okay, we already found a great family for him, is
Right.
what they told Karina.
And how long ago was this?
This was 13 years ago.
So 13 years, a lot has changed. A lot in some places has stayed the same. So I want to be clear about that. Um,
Mhm.
and a part of that change has to do with people like you. So I want to get into that story because you advocated for what's called the Bill of Rights for foster siblings, and you attended a hearing to
I
get.
didn't just do all of that. I wrote it. I emailed every single senator, and nobody listened to me until I got a group of people, until I joined Project Fire. When I joined Project Fire, I just want to make that clear because Project Fire did feel some type of way that I took the spotlight, but I had to explain to them that I've been emailing state representatives
Right.
since the day I lost my brother. Started emailing them, and I said, this is not okay with me. This is not okay. I want a bill. I want rules, and nobody listened to me until, of course, you get a form of people to come with you. Then they listened, and then they sat down with me, and I told them what I wanted from point A to point Z. Siblings are allowed to be placed with each other. Siblings are allowed to spend holidays with each other. And now today, siblings are allowed to know what's going on in the other sibling's life, as long as it's that the sibling was not the perpetrator
Right.
on the other sibling. So now siblings today, like if we, me and my brother were in foster care today, they would have to let me know, hey, we're thinking about adoption. Hey, we're doing this. Hey, he's gonna be moved here, and vice versa.
So the Bill of Rights for foster siblings, which you wrote,
Yes.
is you are laying out essentially every single thing that you wish you would have had protection for when you and your brother were separated.
Absolutely.
So you
Absolutely.
mentioned birthdays, holidays, that you would get notifications, so an open line of communication about where your sibling is if you are separated. And
Hmm.
tell me the other one.
And they are, if they can't like do none of that, either you got to be placed in the same home, or you got to be placed within reasons of the same home, and you are entitled to know everything and anything that's going on with their case. And this is also protection. See, I have 6 sisters and 4 brothers. Okay, so we also have older siblings. Like my oldest sister is 45. So at the time when we first was placed into care, they did not give any of our siblings any right to arrest. They told my sister that because my sister is the warden of the state penitentiary in Tennessee, they told her that her job was too harsh to look out for us. My brother was on probation for selling drugs. Sorry, bro. I love you so much, but they wouldn't let us go with him because he was on probation. And then they wouldn't let us go with our other sister because she had like a CPS visit. Not even CPS didn't take her kids or anything, just a CPS visit. So they completely cut everyone out of our lives, you know.
That is like, that's so crazy, especially for your sibling whose job, which honestly, careers can change at any point, lifestyles can change at any point, and
Mhm.
the idea that they wouldn't allow you to go with a sibling because her job was too demanding is
Mhm.
super suspect.
Yeah.
Um, but right now, when I think of it like kinship placement, and that could be someone who's by blood or someone who is a friend of the family type thing, a trusted friend of the family, is really something that we're looking for. And the idea that your sister wasn't considered because of her demanding job just seems completely ludicrous to me.
Oh, and she was in Tennessee too. That was also their problem, was that it was out of their jurisdiction as well. But
Wow.
still doesn't make no sense. If somebody wants us, let them have us. You're gonna ship me off to strangers,
Right,
you
right.
know.
Wow, wow. So
I
when
just call it child trafficking at its legal finest. That's all it is.
wow, wow. I sorry, I had to pause for that because it's yeah, it's a problem. It's very problematic. And you know, but you are doing something to actually make a difference, to make someone else's life, give them a better life than what you were afforded at that time. So when you were at your hearing advocating to pass the Bill of Rights for foster siblings, how did you feel in the moment when state lawmakers read your letter aloud and told your story about you and your brother's separation?
I had a lot of anxiety. I was more fearful about how my family would have felt, because like what stays at home, what happens in a home stays in a home. So I was really scared to really air out my dirty laundry like that. I know my mom was super pissed because she tried to tell me that I made her seem like she was just some lady getting her ass whipped, and I was like, well, you are, mom, like you are, you know like my dad that I went out there to spread your business, but like nobody knows who you are, they just know my face.
Mhm.
So it just gave me anxiety, but then at the same time, I was so happy. I was so relieved to know that I was able, not just me, too, other foster youth who felt like I felt. We teamed up together. We were able to pass this bill so that no one could feel the way that we feel today. Like I'm 31 years old and I still sit back and think about, like, I wonder how he's doing, you know?
So, have you been in contact with your brother, Ricky?
So I was able to find him last year. I won't tell you guys how because it's self-incriminating, but
Wait
I
a
was
minute.
able to find
Wait,
him.
hold on. Pause, pause, pause. So, your brother, who you and your brother were separated, what at this point it's been 15 years ago that you were
13.
separated?
13.
13 years ago, you were separated in foster care, and you just found him last year.
Yep. On his 18th birthday. He turned 18 last year.
Oh my God.
Because with the private investigator, like, like hiring private investigators and stuff like that, like you're not allowed to get any information until that person becomes of age. So he became of age. I was able to get information on him now. And I reached out to him and he was very drawn back, it seemed like. And then like we talked for a little bit, asked him how he was doing, what's his plans in life. And then one day he was just like, I didn't want to have contact, and I just said okay, I respected
Oh
it.
my God. I I am completely blown, like I am blown away. Like what has happened is criminal in my mind, honestly, because the idea that you and your brother were victims of abuse in the home, that is the genesis of why you had to be removed from the household. That is how you ended up in the foster care system,
Right.
because you were victims. And the idea that information was withheld to even know where your sibling was for 12 years. Like,
Yes.
those are the most fundamental moments for bonding and familial relationships and all of those memories. And you were withheld from each other like y'all did something wrong. That
Yeah.
is insane.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
wonder, I mean, your Bill of Rights for foster siblings being separated made so much sense with your story in general, but the idea that you are the one who are now responsible for making sure that no one else's sibling relationship is diminished, excused, ignored, or hindered is massive. So, yeah, at 31 years old, you should be sitting back and thinking about what you did to make that happen, because that is unbelievable. That is unbelievable. I'm one of four, and I am so sorry. I am so sorry, because I understand what was taken away from you.
Hmm.
That is, wow. I did not, I honestly did not, I didn't expect that answer at all.
Hmm.
Okay. I am, I'm, I'm sorry. I don't want to like take from you. I just like, I want people to really think about that. I want people to
Yeah.
really think about that, because Dominique, you are the comeback story. Like, you really are. And to turn your pain into purpose for the benefit of others, how were you able to mentally make that shift? How were you able to mentally turn this into, salvage this into a positive?
So honestly, it took a lot with my therapist. Took a lot. I've been working with her for like 5 years now, but it took a lot of me, like, talking about her, like understanding, because we used to always say, oh, I got a whooping. And, it took her a while to get me to get the concept, because for the longest, I just was like, I stole it from my parents, just got a little whooping. And I was like, okay. So just like with her help to actually help me understand and see and to be more vulnerable, with her being in my ear, like, hey, you have like a real passionate story. I believe that if you were to share it with the community, you can make a real change. So just like with her help and her advice, and then one day I made a TikTok. Okay, just simple TikTok. The next morning I woke up, my TikTok had 3 million views. And I never would have like imagined that. And then like seeing the support that I got from these strangers that I never knew, and like meeting people over like social media who felt the same way I did, gave me more courage. Now when I wake up in the morning, it's like I got my inbox full saying, hey, I love what you do. I appreciate you. You've helped me heal. I'm gonna pass a bill in my state now too. Just knowing that I could be that sense of relief for other people. Where I have youth in foster care today that find me on social media, and they feel comfortable sending me a message saying, hey, my foster dad is sneaking in my rooms at night and I'm really scared. Can you help me? Because that's also like another thing. Like, abuse is real in the foster care system. Foster parents do put their hands on you. Foster parents, there are foster dads who sneak into your room at night. That like, it really happens. But because these youth, they feel like everyone is connected. Foster parents, the courts, the caseworker, the guardian ad litem. Even sometimes people feel that way about their CASAs, unfortunately. But it's all one big circle, so the youth don't feel like that they have a safe space. And me and my team, we want to be that safe space. Be like, hey, I'm not on their side. I'm on your side.
So talk about, first of all, it's ironic, and I don't even know if that's the right word to use, but in a sense, like, you lost this relationship, you were robbed of this relationship with your brother in the foster care system, and now your vulnerability, your ability to be vulnerable through doing the work on yourself, led you to garner this entire community of people
Mm-hmm.
who are saying, I relate to you because I know you see me. You're telling my story. To wake up to 3 million views on TikTok is something, by being honest about your foster care story, about the Bill of Rights for foster siblings who have been separated, tells you how big of an issue this actually is in
Mm-hmm.
our country and in our system. So, I mean, that's got to feel like some sense of validation.
Yeah, of course it does. It's what helps me keep going to know that I'm reaching people like that. I mean, of course, with the TikTok fame or the Instagram fame, you always gonna get those haters. But I just like love it because I get more support than I do, and it just like I don't know, just like it fills my soul. It actually helps heals me. As crazy as it sounds, even though I'm being vulnerable and I'm sharing my story, and sometimes I do little skits and make fun of it and I turn it funny and it's really not funny.
Yeah.
But like just to know that I'm touching somebody out there and I'm reaching people to where they can be like, hey, you know what? I just want you to know that last night I was feeling really sad, depressed, almost off myself. And because I watched your video, you made me feel different.
Wow.
So just stuff like that, it just keeps me going. Even though the vulnerability like gives me anxiety, I'm like, oh my gosh, how much do I want to share with these people? It just keeps me going because I know that I'm out there healing and I know that I'm making a legacy and I'm building slowly but surely building a foundation with my nonprofit to make sure that we are helping these kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's really incredible. And I just want you to know, as well, as someone who is publicly facing myself, whether people are commenting out of support or they're commenting out of hate and adversity, it's all the same when it really comes down to it. It means that you are being authentic, that you are stating your truth, and there are going to be people who are going to be on one side cheering and on one side booing, but it's all the same. It all
Mhm.
comes, it's the same place, and you should use it for encouragement always. But let's talk about your nonprofit, your mission, and your team. Tell us about it.
Oh, all right. So my team, everyone has a position. So I was in foster care. My co-founder, which is actually my little brother's foster mom, she's my biggest supporter. She's my
Wow.
biggest
So she
sponsor.
circled back.
She's never left me. She's never left me. Just like my casa, never left me. Okay, my casa did pass away at the beginning of this year, but that's the only reason why she left me. But her kids are still here. It's like to be my support. So technically, she never left me, and Karina never left me. So she actually helps me run it. So yeah, me, I'm the foster kid, right?
Yeah.
Karina's the foster parent.
Say the name of the organization and then start that.
So it's called CARES, and it stands for Children Advocacy Resource Educational Services. And our mission is to teach people in the community what the faces that the kids struggle with in foster care, that there is abuse that literally happens in foster care, and these kids feel like that they do not have a safe zone. And we want to be that safety net. We want to be that voices. We want to almost like a casa, but we're going deeper into the trauma, like, hey, like this is what it is. We're giving the community the red stories that nobody wants to hear.
Right.
We're saying like, hey, caseworkers are corrupted, GALs are corrupted. They lie on stage, they lie to the judge, and we're trying to build that foundation to where we can make them feel safe. And how we help make them feel safe is that we share their story, our stories too. Like Karina can say, hey, as a foster parent, I've seen the hell that these caseworkers and stuff put the kids through. She'll go on and on about how she tried to defend the kids, and CPS and caseworkers were always like no and just completely shut her down. And then I have a caseworker on my team who can say, hey, like, I see kids get taken for no reason at times, and I didn't want to be a part of that. So I left it, and then of course I have some of my foster siblings. We call each other brother and sister, never foster brother and sister, but they're on our team too. So that way these youth, like when we go to Third Way Center or to like Urban Peak or all these like other different group homes, to where when we can sit there and talk to the youth, we let them know that we're not just like somebody up here that's just trying to stand here and give you a spill. I want you guys to know that we sat in your spot too. We were in foster care too,
Right.
because the statistics on the foster kids is that only 20% of kids who go into foster care become successful. That means 80% in the dead, in jail, on drugs, incarcerated, are dealing with the CPS system themselves. And that is a pretty high number of failure for these kids that were so cost saving. That's a pretty low number of us being able to succeed. So, we're up here, me and my team, we're up here to teach these youth like, hey, I went through the foster care system. I went through this, and now I'm married. I have a loving husband. I don't want for nothing, and you can have that too.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
got reconnected with my family by choice. Probably, I mean, it's a little complicated, but I love my family,
Yeah.
and just to be that person.
I mean, there's a saying that if you can see it, you can be it, and you are showing it so other people can aspire to be where you are. How can my community support cares?
So I am working on launching a project. I'm actually meeting with Josefina next week. But I'm working
As the
on
director of Advocates for Children, CASA, I just have to.
yes. So I want to work on a project called, I'm gonna name a project underneath my organization called the Hildy Project, which is my cause's name. And
Mm.
I want people to be Hildies, basically, to be that support, to be there when the youth need you. When I was in jail, I needed clothes, I needed shoes. No one never got that for me. In caseworkers, no one never did that for me except for my casa.
Mm.
And she was the only one. I was getting ready to get 3 to 5 years, and they was gonna commit me to DYC. 3 to 5 years. My caseworker told them to do whatever they had to do. My GAL was like, maybe she'll learn. And my casa was the only one. She started crying, saying, don't send her to jail. She's a great kid. I know that she can do it. And that judge looked me in my face and said that I was so lucky to have someone like her, that he was going to give me one more chance, and I better not see him. He better not see me in his courtroom again. And at that time, I was 17, and I never stepped foot into a court since. I mean, for traffic violation, but
That's everybody, yes.
but not for any criminal offenses. And because of her, I was able to succeed. Because of her, I was able to get into my first department. Because of her, I was able to, be successful. I mean, I got pregnant with my daughter. She laid us out so nicely. So that's what I want people to be like. Let's be these voices. Even if sometimes you're gonna get those youth who are hot-headed, high-tempered. And even if you're just sitting there with them in the room and letting them just be emotional and ranting, that still means something to them. Because then they'll sit down and be like, okay, you didn't try to stop me, you didn't call me crazy, you just actually let me feel what I was feeling. So now I'm ready to talk to you.
Yeah.
Now,
Uh,
I do have an event coming up on the 4th. I'm hosting a community event. Like, we're just gonna give out flyers and tell the community about who we are and what our mission is and what people can do to support the youth in here.
well, this is a global community. People listen to this podcast from all over the world. So let's give them a way to stay in contact with you, follow you, your organization. Where can they find and follow you?
So my TikTok icon is and it's spelled THA, and then Best Youth Advocate. And then also same with the Instagram and Facebook, it's just cares, and it is abbreviated. So you want to do C.A. and then the rest.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much it. Like, where I'm following, my website is pending because like I'm still a baby. I just
Yeah.
got signed on with the Secretary of State. I'm working on my 501(c)(3) now. But
Well,
yeah, that's really it.
all of that, all of that's going to come hopefully there's someone listening today who, you know, has been touched by your testimony, been touched by your story, and your ability to advocate for youth in the future. So I am very optimistic. All of that clerical work is going to come, girl, but the real important stuff is the work that you're doing, and you're doing it obviously from the bottom of your heart, and it's beautiful to see. We are rooting for you, Dominique Mallard. Comeback Community. To get more on Dominique and her organization CARES, which is an acronym, please go to my online home, comeback.tv, where I will have all of her links and socials and information and the full podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Dominique.
Thank you for meeting with me. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.